Let's hop in. It's so good to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Joe.
So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 6 years ago, when we look at the calendar, it's mid-March, and the world's starting to shut down. Things are starting to change. How did you get through that era of coronavirus, and how has it changed the way that you approach life and work today?
So the world officially shut down. I remember it being like mid-March of
Yeah.
2020. About 3.5 months prior, I actually was invited to attend something called a men's retreat, which I didn't even know what that was. I was a little apprehensive, but I was curious. It was in the Catskills of New York, which for me is about an hour and 20-minute drive. And it was just about 17 or 18 guys. And it was probably one of the most, this is a word that everyone uses often, but transformative experiences because guys I didn't know. We did exercises in vulnerability, authenticity. There was this one exercise where we just stared into another man's eyes for 10 minutes, and it was really quite profound. We exchanged stories, obviously. There was an exercise about writing a letter to your father. There was an exercise about what is something that you didn't say to someone that you could have said. And so it was just a weekend, and it was quite stunning in what I perceived and what I experienced. And I think that set me up really nicely for being more emotionally available. The premise of that men's retreat was that men have to upgrade because, in the light of the Me Too movement, women are just sort of taking the lead and we should follow. And so I like to say that I am an introvert by nature, but I'm an extrovert if I get paid. So sort of hunkering down was actually not that bad for me. The only thing I did miss was group. Like I like fitness and I like the idea of working out with other people in a gym. But I also at that time also was studying for another certification. And so that allowed me the space and the ability to do that as well. So it set me up both emotionally on vulnerability level, but also on a human to human level because I got to see the effects of it. A good friend of mine lost her sister through COVID. So,
So let me ask you this. You're helping leaders be better leaders.
yeah.
But I want to get to the crux of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds. It's career day, and one of the kids just wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize that for their brains?
Sure. So most people believe that when a crisis happens, you have to get through it. But that's not really where true leadership leads or where someone should come from. It's really about what happens after the crisis. So what happens after something bad happens? And how do you reorientate yourself? How do you reorientate what's going on? Because you still have to do, be, act, and live.
So, and we see that all the time in varying levels of people that are going through things like that. And that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing for all of us. I mean, you get to a certain age in your life where you can look back on people in your life and you realize what the epicenter of trauma was that they never recovered from. And for a lot of people, it's a death or it's a loss of something. And it's about acquiring those skills to get to get to a better place and to be a leader.
100%. I lean obviously on my expertise. So beyond being a keynote and TEDx speaker, I'm a journalist. At this point, I've studied 2,000 leaders, change makers, even celebrities in the area of leadership, also thought leadership and performance, and the human condition as well. And for the most part, I think leaders lead by having that armor around them and having to have not a facade, but having to have a role that they have to play rather than sinking into what really connects us and binds us all. And so I think the key element to all that is really this idea, and it's really the genesis of what I teach, which is to just be completely authentic with yourself. That's the only way that you can actually gain the clarity and the composure in order to lead properly. Because what's really leadership? It's not always about corporate setting. It's about how is it that you model to other people your behaviors? And through that, it trickles down into your team, it trickles down into your family, it trickles down into the community. And so that's really the origin point of what I like to hone in on.
So when you were 13 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream gig?
I was really into computers. I mean,
Okay.
I was the nerd. I studied computer science and information systems in college, and but then I found out through working for a lot of dot coms because I was part of the dot com boom, and unfortunately the dot com crash. And so I learned from a lot of startups that I worked at that I didn't really love it. I liked it. I was good at it. I had a skill level to it. I had an aptitude for it, but I was really focused on, I was a shy kid who was extremely introspective and extremely sharp and self-sufficient. So I just knew whatever I decided to do, I would be able to lean on that as a barometer. As a matter of fact, I actually had a really good friend who on 9/11 had an event at the World Trade Center prior to obviously it going down. And he asked me, he's like, "Do you want to, work here? I can get you a job here. You can make a lot of money just fresh out of college." And I looked at him and I said, "Eric," I said, "thank you, but I said, I'm just not a suit and tie guy." And he's like,
Yeah.
"You're actually refusing a job just because of suit and tie?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just not me." And unfortunately, Eric was on the 104th floor and
Wow.
he had no chance. And they actually found his severed arm with a tattoo of a bulldog. And so that's when I really learned and knew that if I listened to my actual inner instincts, it would never lead me astray. Now, I'm not saying that I would have been in that building that day, may or may not have been, but
Sure.
I do know it served me well to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a metaphor for sure. Yeah. So I'm curious, coming from a leadership standpoint, what were the earliest examples? I know growing up and being a Gen Xer in the 80s, hearing Reagan after the shuttle exploded and
Hmm.
about how the astronauts kissed the face of God, those kinds of epic things. We don't have those anymore right now, especially in this political environment of somebody that comforts everybody from a benevolent place. But we used to. So my question to you is this. What did you hear growing up, subconsciously or consciously, that led you to your idea, your foundational concept of leadership?
I think it was this ability to always really listen, but listen deeply. I think people have a real sort of barrier because they often feel like they want to get their voice out. But true listening and true leading and true acting and true feeling is the ability to actually sink into self, right? And so you could do that through many different ways, meditation, prayer, journaling, breathing exercises that's so rampant now, which is fantastic, yoga. And I think that is the only way to get to the cornerstone of what really matters. And I echo these truths in my TEDx talk that I did a couple of months ago. I had a cancer relapse, so I've been in remission for a decade. And then last June of 2024, I had a cancer relapse, and I went through an extensive 16-month recovery, including a stem cell transplant. So life, in a way, has showed me that you can have these these rebirths and these transformations. They actually in the office, in the medical office and in the hospital, Joe, they actually called it a medical rebirth. Once you get your stem cell transplant, they actually count the days after. And I thought it was a joke. I thought they were like, they know I kind of, I'm a board certified wellness coach. I was like, okay, maybe they're like woo-wooing me. They're like, no, this is an actual term. It's called a medical rebirth. So they're like, technically, you have two birth dates. And so I like to say I have a birth date and my actual birth date in winter. And then I also have a birth date in the summer. So I have two presents coming to me every
Yeah,
year.
that's amazing. Um, yeah, the stem cell idea, I have never heard anything other than positive pieces of that. Did you do it in the States? I often
I
hear you have to leave.
No, no. So so the stem cell transplant I got was a life-saving stem cell transplant. The stem cell transplant some people like to get
Yeah.
is for like pain management
Yeah.
or regeneration. No, this was actually the fact that I had lymphoma. So I was diagnosed in 2014 with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went through some chemotherapy called R-CHOP. So in 4.5 months after that, I was cancer-free, and then I was cancer-free for a decade. Still going once a year to get, blood work and stuff checked, and I was fine. And so the stem cell transplant I'm talking about was life-saving. So they actually have to put a neck catheter on you and harvest the stem cells. You can also get donor stem cells. And if you get donor stem cells, there's a risk of infection. So it's graft versus host disease. Fortunately, I didn't have to face that. But I did spend 29 days in the hospital. I lost 26 pounds. One night I had to be rushed to the ICU because every time I would stand up, I would get tachycardia. My pulse would go to like 160. And so they had to give me norepinephrine. And I got out of the hospital. I had about 5 months of physical therapy. And then I had to, and then it was an optional thing that my oncologist suggested, which was a clinical trial where I could do an immunotherapy, which is boosting up the immune cells. He's like, it's an additive because before I got the immunotherapy, I did get scans, and fortunately, I was in what they call complete response. I don't use the word remission anymore, so it's called CR technically,
Yeah.
but I say it's a complete response to treatment. And so I decided to do the 4.5 months of immunotherapy as an extra insurance policy, as he called it. And I'm here living as much as I can and
Yeah.
doing the work that I think is necessary in the world.
So did you have a near-death experience during that time? Did you have a spiritual revelation?
Um, I did not have a technical near-death experience. There was one week that I didn't want to eat anything. Like I said, I lost 26 pounds, but I do call it an exile of some kind. I call it a spiritual exile. So I grew up Catholic. I grew up in the suburbs of New York, in Westchester County, New York. I was an altar boy for like 6 years. But in college, I went to college in the city, New York City. And I knew there was other things that I need to explore. So I studied everything from Buddhism to Vedic philosophy. And so for me, it was a spiritual exile. Um, and I leaned on two things, two truths that was afforded to me of happenstance. So when you get a stem cell transplant, they actually put you in a quarantine room because they have to stave away any effects of infections. And so I had silence and stillness, and those were free. Those were available to me anytime, anywhere. And when I leaned into it, I realized something really profound that the surrender wasn't surrendering to life or death. The surrender was surrendering to the process. That I can't control my platelets. I can't control my blood counts. I can't control my red blood cells. I can only control my mental faculty to some degree, my emotional center, and what I believe to be true in terms of the human experience. What for me was the most challenging was it wasn't really transitioning to death. I have a strong groundedness with that. No one knows exactly what happens, but I've studied enough and I've learned enough and I've allowed myself to be open enough to realize there's something else, whatever that something else is, even if you're an atheist.
Yeah.
I don't. And so for me, what really helped me or what really challenged me in helping me was the ability to think to myself, did I do everything I came here to do? That was the fear that I still had potential. I still wanted to not achieve things, but I still wanted to give of myself
Yeah.
to myself and to others.
So let me ask you this. To survive cancer, to go through that process, to be successful in business, to do everything that you've done in your life, take me back to your beginnings. What were the seeds? What were the foundational elements, whether they were inspirational forces or things that you learned that gave you the strength? Because you can't put that's not something you put lightly out there when you overcome something that massive. What was it about your life that led you to that point of overcoming?
Yeah. So I can trace it back. Most people have said to me, wow, your parents did a great job. And I'm not taking any away from my parents. They're still alive. Thankfully, I have two of them still kicking. They gave me the basic stuff, right? They gave me love. They showed love through food, took care of me, security wise. But I think it was a personality driven thing for me. I was just an always curious, inquisitive person. I didn't really say much. I was friends with pretty much everyone. Popular, quote unquote, popular people would invite me places, and the people who were outcasts would invite me places, and I would be open enough to go and explore. I think there was a part of me also that just always felt to some degree, and I echo this in my TEDx talk. So my TEDx talk is called 7 Minutes to Wellness: How to Love Your Inner Stranger. And people are always confused. They're like perplexed by that. Like, what do you mean an inner stranger? And I said for me, the inner stranger was that young person who never felt grounded, who always felt like there was just something off on the side that I just really couldn't get my hands on or my feet firmly planted. And for another person, they said, "Oh, okay. So my inner stranger is really that female ideal of her professional life, that corporate exec or that great mother or that great sibling that I can't touch. So that's my inner stranger. And I talk about this with you right now because I think to some degree those were the seeds that afforded me the ability to look at a situation and to be objective about it rather than be subjective. I think people live in so much subjectivity that they're not able to see, well, what are the qualifying centers that we all can relate to? Like, I'll give you an example. I have a sister, a sibling, who believes a completely different political mindset than I do. There were some tensions there, but I realized, okay, well, what do we have in common? We both love our parents. We both want to do everything for them. We both love food.
Yeah.
We both love travel. So let's focus on those things and let those things germinate rather than divisions that we set. And I know this is easier said than done, but I think it behooves us, especially in the world, especially in what I teach, especially with leaders, when it comes to adversity or disruption, the only way forward is through it. You can't stave away discomfort. You have to actually go through the discomfort.
So talk to me a little bit about what motivates you every day when that alarm clock goes off to make an impact on lives, to help leaders, to take care of your soul, all of these things at a high level. What is that energy when the alarm clock goes off in the morning for you?
So the alarm clock goes off, and first thing I do after I wake up is I meditate.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for over 20 years. People can call it thoughtful ideation. People can call it silence and stillness. I call it meditation. And for me, it's simple. I'm not in lotus position. I'm not chanting something, although you could do that. You could chant, you could hum. I just listen to instrumental music. I started off at like 1 minute decades ago, and now I'm at 20 minutes a day, and it sets the tone. If I don't do it, Joe, I literally can feel a difference. And this is not psychosomatic. This is actually something that I've tested. And so that allows me, there's different schools of thought with meditation. Some people believe meditation is just having nothingness and just being nothingness. And some people think that you can, gain great insight from meditation. Things come to you, ideas and inspiration. Wonderful. I just, for me, use the basis of just a level of detachment with self. So the actual terminology is like psychological distancing. So I'm distancing the Savio that's actually meditating. So I do it lying down, and the Savio that's sort of just existing. So consciousness that's existing. This gets all into sort of nebulous talk, but that's really for me what really sets the tone in how I lead, how I speak, what I do. And to a large degree, I kind of see it like a battery recharge.
Yeah.
And it's worked extremely well for me in the long run.
So if you can meet a leader, a business mind, somebody that's inspirational on the planet right now, anybody alive, spend some time with them. Who would you love to meet and talk to?
I would say Oprah Winfrey, and
Yeah,
I know I'm going old school.
it's all good.
I would say it's because she always allows you to feel that hope is possible, even for herself. She had a weight issue. Yes, she's taking um, a GLP-1, but the fact of the matter is, you always got to see uh, transparent wise what she's all about. Now I know there's controversy with her asking for money recently with Hawaii and all that. But at the end of the day, look at the body of work that she has fostered and allowed to embed in other people's minds and hearts. Uh, I think she's a great example, and she speaks openly about her background, a great example of the fact not only that she overcame and triumphed, because all of us want to do that, she just happened to have the right set of circumstances, and also she prepared herself well. So that's you have to say that's the point as well. But she allowed herself to also um, like learn. She was curious enough to ask the right questions. She was open enough to express what she felt was, to some degree, not something that she wanted to align herself with. And I also think to a large degree, it just would be fun just to see the overall sort of comprehensive layout that she's planned out for herself in her life.
So surviving cancer, getting to a point where you're healthy now, what did you do? What did you do after you realize you biologically got over something that could have put you in death's way. What did you change about your life?
My focus now is really on keynoting.
Yeah,
That's something I did my TEDx talk. It was keynoting, but that's really important to me because I didn't have a voice for 16 months. I consciously, during the healing process, stopped everything. I knew that this was a relapse. They call it a refractory relapse. And so I knew for me, I had to give it everything I could because I did it 10 years prior. And one of the individuals in the hospital said, she goes like, I've seen a lot of people like you who like stem cell transplants. She goes like, you don't even look like you. And I said, because I faced that enemy before.
yeah,
I know emotionally, I know what that enemy is like. So that's not an issue. I need the medicines. I need the treatments. I need science. But I also relied on the things that I mentioned. So I relied on my background. I relied on my expertise. I relied on even AI in order to help me get through it. So I explored, Joe, every single thing you can think when it comes to healing, literally, including something called ecstatic dancing, which is like when if I heard about it a few years ago, I would start laughing. But because like you dance with yourself and it's just like music and it's just barefoot. I mean, I explored all that. I literally did internal family systems where, there's a lot of documented cases where basically they say all of us have parts within ourselves. So people actually display those parts. They're not acting, they're just displaying them. And you get to see how those parts show up in your life. The only thing I didn't explore is psychedelics.
yeah,
And the reason why I didn't explore that, and I've interviewed a couple of people in that field, is because I knew that if you open any door in life, you have to be responsible enough to know what you're opening and responsible enough to take the information and apply it. Otherwise, it's just information, which
yeah,
which does no one any good, and it just causes consternation. And so for me, I was like, well, my body went through trauma. I'm not going to let my mental body, quote unquote, go through that because I'm not ready to open that door. And right now, I don't think I even need it.
yeah,
But I wanted to just give the further point. I grew up in an Asian Indian household, and so when I got that complete response treatment, and I was deliberating whether or not to do this clinical trial, my sister was like, "Why would you want to do like 4.5 months more of treatment when you just got a complete response?" I said, "Because if it ever came back, then it, the onus is on me. I,
yeah,
I didn't do everything that's necessary." And so my parents kept saying, they're like, okay, well, you're going to go back. You're going to go back to work, right? And all that. And I said, well, I can always make money in the future. I can't get well. I can only get well now.
yeah,
And if I don't lead properly now with myself, then I can't do anything else in the real material world. So what's the point? And I'm not trying to say that my story, if you hear it and you look at my credentials and all that, wonderful. I'm happy at what I did, but it's not about that for me because at the end of the day, who are we really at the end of the day? I believe that, and there's actually a survey out there where they surveyed all these people on their deathbed and they asked them, what's the one thing that you regret or one thing that you're happy about? And they're like, well, I regret that I didn't have more connections with people. But no one from that survey mentioned, oh, I should have made a couple of more $1 million. Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, that didn't matter to them. What mattered to them was, did they matter? And did people see them? Did they create some type of significance for themselves and others in order to make the world a better place?
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and there was a projector next to that version, and you hit play, and it was the life you've lived, everything that you've done, overcome, and achieved, would that young version of you believe that this happened?
No, that version of myself would never believe that they got a title, a two-time cancer survivor. No, absolutely not. I did used to look at those commercials and look at, I think the Hope Center or something where it was an integrative. And I said, if I ever get cancer, I would do that. I would do some type of integrative thing. So that's one. Number two, I do think that I always felt I was successful.
Yeah,
So that version of myself that wanted that would probably always know that they would find a way to make that happen. But success is to me is not just numbers
yeah,
and things on a spreadsheet. That's just not success to me. Success to me at the grassroots level is whether or not I actually allowed people to feel me in any which way, hopefully positive.
yeah.
And that if I can leave the world with that, then I did my job.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that sees you speak, everyone that knows you in different business and personal capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm someone who is willing to. lie in the discomfort. I'm someone who's willing to allow myself to be seen. I'm willing to allow myself to be a model for other people who can't achieve. I was talking to someone recently, and one of the things they asked me was, how do you see yourself in light of other people? Similar to your question.
Yeah.
And I answered it in a way that I felt was just really honest and truthful. And to me, there's a lot of talk about this idea of we have to be what our parents envision for us. We have to be what the world thinks of us. We have to be what our community thinks of us. But at the end of the day, when the lights are closed and the lights are off and the doors are closed, we often really feel like we're just not living up to that potential. So I think the first thing I would say to myself in general, or how I want others to view me as, is someone who's not afraid to ask the hard questions, and also someone who is has the ability to feel like others can understand them. Whether or not you think I have a magnetic personality, which people have said that, or whether you think I'm a dud, that doesn't really matter. What matters is how I view myself and how I think of myself.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history, where would you go? What would you love to see before your eyes? And it won't create a weird tear in time. You just get to see it and come back if you want.
I would love to see how the pyramids were really constructed. And I
Yeah.
know there's some theories, and I know
Uh-huh.
this it's some, but I really would like to, because I think that time in history was a combination of science, technology, and also their deep-rooted spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we have just touched the surface as to the genius of it, and to a large degree, the purpose of it.
Absolutely. So if anybody wants more, they want to see you speak, they want to reach out, any of the good business questions, how do they do it?
They can go to my website, Savio P Clemente, SAVIOP CLEMENTE. On there, I have my keynote work. I have my TEDx talk. I also have a weekly Substack that comes out every Wednesday. It's about head, heart, and gut intelligence, and what I've gleaned through my interviews with all these shakers and movers in the world. And then they can follow me on social media at The Human Resolve. I'm on every platform. But yes.
Wonderful. I will put all those links in the show notes. What an honor, Savio. Thank you so much for your story, your strength, conviction. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. I really
You bet.
appreciate it.
You bet. And I operate pretty quick, so I'll have links over to you tomorrow. What a great
Wow.
story, man. Thank you so much. I really
Okay.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, wonderful.